Good morning. My name is Elspeth Rollert, and I work at Microsoft. I am thrilled to be here today. I work in technology and get to see each and every day how it transforms people's lives for the better. For today's event, we'll be using Microsoft's Bing Pulse technology to vote in real time on questions posed to you, the audience. So participate, make your voice heard, and help guide the conversation. But first, let's make sure you're connected. Behind me, you'll see instructions as to how you can access the museum's Wi-Fi. So using your phone, tablet, or computer, connect. Once you're online, you'll go to bing.com/no ceilings. Again, that's bing.com/no ceilings. It's here where you will be able to vote to the questions posed to you. If you go to the website now, there will be a test question. It reads, how many women scientists do you know? Go ahead and vote. Again, this is just a test. Want to make sure you're ready for the real time. When you're voting during the event, you'll have 2 minutes. At the end of those 2 minutes, we'll flash the results on screen and use those results to help guide the conversation. Lastly, when you sat on your chair today, there was a sign. The front of that sign has statistics on STEM and women. On the back of that sign, you'll find a blank equation. Fill out that equation. In the first part, put your STEM interested field. On the second part, write your desired occupation. So for example, me plus math equals architect. Just that simple. Once you've filled it out, we'd encourage you to share that across your social media channels. For example, take a picture of yourself with the sign, #NoCeilings. Finally, while we ask you to use your phones, tablets, or computers during the event, make sure to turn the volume down so we don't disrupt anyone talking. Enjoy the event, and let's go into space.
Mark's president of the museum, and welcome to this wonderful event. What you just saw there was a spaceship taking off from the museum and flying to the moon. And what a wonderful metaphor for your life if you can have a STEM career, because you'll get to do things as exciting as flying into space or saving people's lives, but it all starts with staying in school and learning math and science. So this event today is all about that. So with that, I would like to introduce Kari Byron, one of the Mythbusters. Please welcome Kari.
You got Space Odyssey. I was hoping for Beastie Boys or AC/DC or no? Pretty dramatic. I love that. So great to be here with you guys today. It's such a privilege. I want to thank you for all coming, whether you're watching here in Denver or, this is on the internet, so another city, another country even. Thank you for joining us. Now, I've spoken at the museum before, but never in space. Do I look like I'm floating? Woo! I'm very happy and privileged to be here in front of so many women and girls that are interested in science and think it's as cool as I do. Now, you may know me from Mythbusters. For the past decade or so, I have been involved in science education on television. And I have grown a passion for STEM through the television show. And quite honestly, I wasn't super into science when I was a kid. I lost the passion about 12 years old and didn't find it again until my 20s. And that's why I'm so passionate now, because I really do want to find that disconnect. Why was 12-year-old me? Why did I get disinterested in science? And that's why I think this here is so important. Now, this event is the 4th in the No Ceilings Conversation series. No Ceilings is a Clinton Foundation initiative that's designed to identify the progress that we've made so far for women and in the past 20 years and the gaps that still remain. Now, for this event, No Ceilings wants to hear from you directly. The women who work in science and technology, engineering, mathematics, and the girls who aspire to work in those fields someday. Now, we want to know the challenges that you face, the successes that you've had, and try to make it sort of a clearer path for the girls that are moving into STEM fields. Try to figure out how we can actually help them along the way. So before we begin this important conversation, on behalf of the Clinton Foundation, I would like to take a moment to thank George Sparks for the introduction, as well as for hosting this event. And thank also the Denver Museum of Nature and Science for having us here today. And give an enormous thank you to Microsoft. Thank you, Elspeth, for being here, empowering this entire conversation. You can clap, it's okay. Now, in thinking through the setup for this dialogue, Chelsea Clinton really wanted to make this as participatory as possible. She wants to get all of you involved, and she wants to make this a really open conversation. So get your questions ready. That's what we're going to be using Microsoft Bing technology here to guide the program. As we progress along the conversation, I'm going to be calling on some of the audience members. You guys are going to pose questions to the group, and those questions will appear on the screen behind me out in space. And there'll be some multiple choice answers. They'll also appear on your mobile device at the website www.bing.com/no ceilings. So I encourage all of you to pull up that website right now. Get ready to vote, because this is going to get all American Idol style. The results will be posted behind me in space, and we will discuss the results as a group and with the online audience. So those of you who are live streaming this conversation, please submit your questions to the below live stream box on social media using the hashtag #NoCeilings. I'm sure all of you know how to use social media at this point, especially the under 12 group. I've noticed my daughter knows how to use Twitter. Sadly, she's 5. Yeah. Now, before we begin, please turn your attention behind me for a short video about No Ceilings.
When I was in junior high school, I was totally entranced by the NASA program and wanted to go into space, and wrote off a letter, and NASA wrote back and said, sorry, we don't take women. When I was in junior high school, I was totally entranced by the NASA program and wanted to go into space, and wrote off a letter, and NASA wrote back and said, sorry, we don't take women, which was the first time anybody had ever said to me, in a really official way, besides, boys on the playground, sorry, you can't do something because you're a girl. There were colleges I couldn't apply to. There were scholarships I was not entitled to receive. So I lived with that and was thrilled to watch it change, really a few years into, my adulthood.
I was not put on this earth to be invisible.
Investing in women and girls isn't just the smart thing to do from a moral standpoint, but it's also the smart thing to do from an economic and a strategic standpoint.
No Ceilings, the Full Participation Project, focuses on advancing rights and opportunities for women and girls around the world.
In 1995, 189 countries came together in Beijing for the 4th World Conference on Women. We agreed to an ambitious platform for action: the full and equal participation of women in political, civil, economic, social, and cultural life. That's why we are launching No Ceilings. We want to know what we've achieved and what we have to do.
Despite great progress, women do remain the majority of the world's unhealthy, unfed, and unpaid. We need to accelerate that pace of change.
We can use new tools and partners to move toward our goal.
Data makes a huge difference in terms of where you make investments and where you can see that you're making progress and where you're not.
We are working with Google and Facebook and telecom companies around the world so that we have a more holistic picture of what women and girls have access to.
We're going to begin hosting convenings just like this across the country and around the world so that we can hear directly from the girls and the women and the boys and the men about what we need and what we can do to achieve full participation for girls and women in society.
This is our moment to speak up loudly with our voices.
This is our moment.
Founder and CEO of Goldie Blocks, Debbie Sterling. And Director of Photography at Pixar Animation Studios, Danielle Feinberg. I feel very lucky to be in the company of these women because each one of them is an inspiration to me personally. So I would like to invite you guys to kick this off.
Sure, thank you, Kari. I want to echo some of your gratitude from earlier and thank the Denver Museum of Nature and Science and George Sparks for hosting us and also for bringing his almost 10-year-old daughter, Amanda. I want to thank all of you for joining us here in the audience or online. As Kari mentioned, and as you heard a little bit about in the video, No Ceilings is an effort between the Clinton Foundation along with the Gates Foundation to assess where we are from 1995 through 2015 on the status of rights and opportunities for women and girls. Where have we made progress and where do gaps still remain? And particularly focused on the progress, what can we correlate to why we've made progress so that we can better focus our energies and efforts over the next 20 years so that hopefully we do get to full participation. We know, though, that unfortunately one area where not only does a gap remain, but where a gap has grown is in the participation of women and girls in the STEM fields, not only here in the United States, but really around the world. So although I admittedly got to go to space camp when I was 13, which I loved, so although my mother got rejected from her NASA aspirations when she was 13, when I was 13, the picture was very different from me. If we think about just the last 20 years, there are fewer girls who are aspirational in the math and science fields in the United States than there were 20 years ago. We have significantly fewer women graduating with computer science degrees. We have significantly fewer women graduating with mechanical engineering degrees than we did in the mid and late 1980s. And so we're really losing ground in this area, which is why we have such a frenetic focus. Not only we at the Clinton Foundation, but increasingly we as a country, because we know that more than 1 million jobs are being created over the next decade in the STEM fields, and we want to have the best and the brightest to be participating in those jobs so that our toys are more fun and our movies are more interesting, but also that our lives are healthier and generally just richer. And we won't be able to do that if we leave a whole gender behind. So we are acutely focused on this conversation, and we're thrilled that the we isn't just us at the Clinton Foundation. And we're so grateful that all of you are here with us today, and we hope that this conversation is not only robust today, but only the beginning. So thank you, Kari, and thank you to our remarkable panelists. Debbie, do you want to say a few words?
Sure. So it's such an honor to be here. This is something I'm obviously so passionate about. And I remember as a little girl always being good at math, but never really seeing myself having a STEM career. And even when my high school math teacher told me I should study engineering, I thought, ew, engineering. Why would she think I'd want to be a train driver? I had no idea what it was. And I was so lucky though to have a woman role model like that in my life to encourage me and tell me I might be good at it and I might like it. And I remember giving it a try in college and finding that passion. And it's opened up so many doors for me, and to the point where I've become so obsessed with getting more girls and women sparking that interest early on so that they don't miss out like I almost did. That's why I created Goldie Blocks a couple years ago, and it's something that, you know, I just wake up every morning and it's all I can think about and all I want to do.
And you'll probably be the inspiration for many other girls. So thank you so much for being here. And someone who I am totally inspired by as well. Would you like to give us any remarks?
Sure. I'm thrilled to be here. Just coming off the Made with Code event in New York, which
So
for any
cool.
of you girls out there interested in computer programming, go to madewithcode.com. There's some awesome stuff. I went to Harvard and studied computer science, and my classes were 5 to 10% women. And it was really hard. I'd be in the science lab programming late at night, and the guys would all get together and they would figure out all the secrets to the assignments, and they wouldn't share. And if I went over to ask a simple question, they would ignore me. And so I'm really excited to be involved in stuff like this because I want that girl to have friends. And even if they aren't in the room with her, maybe they're on the internet with her, but they've got her back so that we don't lose people. Girls who are sitting in the science lab like, why would I keep doing this? This is no fun. Because it actually turns out it's really fun.
All right. Well, you know, let's make this a group conversation. I'd like to bring the audience into this now. So I would like to find Dr. Michelle Coons. Where are you? Please stand up, and could you please ask the first question for us?
Sure thing. So when you think about or picture a woman in STEM, what sort of jobs do you think of?
Hey, thank you for your question. Now, everyone can go to bing.com/no ceilings and cast your votes to what you think the answer to this should be. And I mean, when I think scientist growing up, I mean, what picture did you guys get in your head? It definitely wasn't Debbie.
Well, there's that.
I would think of some sort of awkward, nerdy, generally a man. And the engineers didn't look like you. I didn't have that face to aspire to.
There's this famous study called the Draw a Scientist test. I'm not sure if you've heard of it or not, but they'll have little kids as young as 5 or 6 years old draw a picture of what a scientist looks like. And time again, it's always a white man in a lab coat. And we start with that image in our heads, or of Albert Einstein with the IQ off the charts, and you think, well, that's what a scientist is. And, and it's something that you start to grow up with, and further you disassociate yourself with it. And it's so important for women scientists. I didn't know that many when I first started my company, and now I know so many, and they're incredible. And it's important for them to get out there and share their stories and become role models so that we can debunk that stereotype.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to imagine what you can't see.
Right.
And that's not only true for kind of women scientists, however that's defined when you're 5 or 6, but it's also true for potential careers. And that is one of the driving motivations of Made with Code, to help more young people, and particularly young women and girls, to understand how code and computer science is integral to now literally almost everything. The clothes we wear, the movies we watch, the toys we play with, not only kind of the buildings that are built or, the coolest new functionality that comes out of Facebook. So that it's important that we not only have role models who, look like Debbie, and not only Mark Zuckerberg, whom I really like, so it's nothing against Mark Zuckerberg, or Albert Einstein, but also that we have a greater appreciation of how fundamental code really is now to almost every industry and possible career.
I mean, definitely things are getting better because, my daughter watches Doc McStuffins, which is a little girl who's a doctor, and, she's black, which is amazing because that's the picture my daughter's going to have of who can be a doctor. But still, there's not enough. There's not enough. It hasn't completely changed. So anybody here, have you had the same experience that girls... Oh, wait, looks like we actually have our results in. Elspeth, could you provide the breakdown for us?
Sure. For those under 18, the most chose chemist in a lab. And for those 18 and over, the most also chose chemist in a lab.
Oh, well, that's pretty cool. What do you guys think of that? Chemists in a lab, is that what you think of when you think of women in STEM jobs? Because it's actually quite crazy how many jobs there are in STEM. Everything from nursing to, I have a friend who's a CSI. and all STEM jobs that are so creative and interesting.
One of the things I love about the Pixar movies is you can be a coder, but you can also be a physicist or a mathematician, all kinds of things that play into how we make our movies. You have to think a lot about physics if you're going to do special effects of a river flowing through the world you create. Or we have virtual tailors who build clothing and have to know all about the physics of the movement. Or Meredith's head of curly hair in Brave required a whole new physics engine to be built for that movie. So it isn't even just code, it's like everything. And we don't wear lab coats either, but you could if you wanted to.
Well, what I think is so interesting about these results is it kind of speaks to that draw a scientist test where the drawing is the scientist in the lab coat. And that's just one of so many STEM careers that you could have. So that's what's so interesting is that it's so diverse. I do engineering and I'm a toy inventor. Right. And I think that growing up, I would have never thought that toys require so much engineering and art and story and all of these other things that I love and these creative outlets I didn't realize that engineering had. So, I think that that's one of the things that we need to do is help share all of the different STEM fields that there are.
Okay, I think we have another audience question. Patty Lopez, where are you? Please, right here. Please stand up. Okay, so what's your question?
I'd like to know, how would you describe a woman scientist, an engineer, mathematician, technologist, computer scientist?
It's definitely along the same line right here. Like, how would you describe a mathematician? You probably wouldn't think Danica McKellar. You guys know who I'm talking about? She was Winnie Cooper from The Wonder Years. I think she's on Dancing with Stars now, but I look at her and I'm like, that's a mathematician. Yes, that's what I want to see. That's somebody a little girl can look up to and see themselves as.
I think this is another area where, again, it's important to kind of be cognizant that it's hard to imagine what you can't see. And I know there's some tension around whether or not anyone should ever be described as a woman scientist or a woman mathematician, because candidly, we would never describe someone as a man scientist or a man mathematician. But as we were talking a little bit backstage, there is a new big math award that's being funded by two people who've been incredibly successful in the STEM fields, to put it mildly, Mark Zuckerberg and Yuri Milner, called the Breakthrough Math Award. And it was awarded over the weekend to 5 people, recipients of $1 to $3 million in grants for their research. All 5 were men. That fact was not mentioned in any of the articles that I read about the award. So just the invisibility of women continues to be not only perpetuated, but I think really pernicious. And so I would hope that it would be a big deal when ideally there is a woman, hopefully next year. And so I think one of the things that we have to be aware of, even if it's maybe uncomfortable, is that it is important to think about a woman scientist. Not only how we would describe her, but like calling her out as a her. Not to forget that pronouns are still an important part of this conversation and in trying to, I think, solve this challenge for all of us.
I was at the White House Science Fair a couple weeks ago, and one of the amazing girls that had made it there, she had been traveling with another friend and 2 boys, and she was on the airplane. And the flight attendant came up to them, and they're younger, so she brought them all wings, and she looks at the boy and goes, "And you can be a pilot?" She looks at the next boy, "And you can be a pilot?" And then she looks at the girl and says, "And you can be a flight attendant?" "And you can be a flight attendant." And the best thing of all was the girl's response. She goes, "Why can't I be a pilot? Come on." So that's what I think we need to focus on, is that we have to change an entire worldview here. We definitely have to keep pointing this out to people, because the flight attendant, she didn't mean anything by it. It's just that's how she was raised as well. Oh, it looks like we do have some answers here from Elspeth. Could you do the breakdown for us?
Sure. For those under 18, the most chose brilliant. For those over 18, the most also chose brilliant.
I like that. That is awesome. Brilliant. What do you guys think of that? I mean, was the first thing you thought of brilliant? Please tell me it wasn't nerd. Anybody? Feel free to raise your hand.
What did you think?
Right there. What did you think? You thought curious. she said curiosity, that you don't have to be necessarily brilliant. You just have to be curious and engaged in the. I have, spent a lifetime being afraid of trying to be smart, and it really all I needed to be was curious. I think that's where there's a lot of crossover with art and science. It's all about a curiosity and just sort of fostering that curiosity.
So the moment I declared engineering as my major, I went from straight A's down to, I'll admit, B's and C's, and that was tough for me because I was always that perfectionist, wanted to be the straight A student, and it was the first time in my life that I'd really challenged myself, and it was the point where I was always worried that I wasn't smart enough, and I saw a lot of my classmates who were all just. I was at Stanford, and if you can imagine the engineering Stanford program, some pretty brilliant people enter into it. And what I realized that what got me through wasn't about being a genius. It was about finding a passion and sticking with it, and not getting discouraged if I didn't ace every test, and not getting discouraged if I failed, but being willing to fail and overcome and stick with it and be incredibly stubborn, because once I did finally kind of solve that math problem or code that program correctly, there's nothing in the world like it, because you feel like you climb to the top of the mountain and you become invincible and start believing in yourself. So I think that while many engineers and scientists are brilliant, I think it is that curiosity and just stubbornness and willing to take risks and fail and get back up and try again.
I think totally to echo that was that you get sold this sort of story that you're either smart at something or you're not. And when I was in 8th grade, I was taking a computer programming class, and we had a little textbook of some kind, and there was one little paragraph, and it was about something called shape tables. And I already really liked using the computer to make images, and I thought, oh, this is the holy grail of like making pictures, because back then it was pretty rudimentary. But it was this really obscure little paragraph. And I thought, I got to figure out how to do this, because maybe I can make better pictures with this. And so I spent a whole weekend at home, and I just kept reading it and working it out. And it turned out you had to be able to count in hexadecimal, so I had to go figure that out, and you had to do this thing, and I programmed, and I spent the whole weekend on it because I was totally fascinated. And by the end of the weekend, I had it figured out, and it turns out it was not the holy grail of computer graphics. But it was that moment where I was like, oh, if I just actually try really hard, then I can get there. It isn't about whether I'm smart or I'm not smart. It's about applying yourself. And so I think the curiosity is way more important than being brilliant.
Wow. Can my daughter be you? I need That's amazing. I mean, I've always found that there's so many ways to come at a problem, and it's not necessarily the answer is not necessarily going to come from the genius that's working out all the math problems. I recently was working on something with my cohorts, and Grant is a very smart guy. He's one of the co-hosts on our show, and he came up with this really complex robotic arm to achieve putting a mirror over a camera, and it wasn't working, and he spent hours doing it. And I walked in, grabbed a stick, and achieved what he was trying for hours with his robotic arm. And I was thinking, and nothing felt better than just solving that problem. And with all of his brilliance and all of his math and all of his computer modeling, all I needed to do was poke it with a stick. That right there is curiosity, and that's STEM too. So I'd like to get another question here. We've got Monica Mishra. Right in the front. Great.
Hi, I'm Monica. I'm a computer science major at Harvard also. And my question is, how did you become interested in science, technology, engineering, or math?
Now, of course, you can vote on this at home. So please go to the bing.com/no ceilings website and vote from your mobile devices as well. So how did you get interested?
So, I remember I tried an engineering class in college. It was Mechanical Engineering 101 at the suggestion of my high school math teacher. And I walked in there were very few women in the room, and I just thought, I almost turned right around. I thought, oh no, what have I gotten myself into? And I was worried we were gonna be just fixing train engines or something in that room. I had no idea, but that class really changed my whole outlook. I remember one of our first projects, we had this assignment where we got into groups and we had to build contraptions that would fling a tennis ball as far as you could, and you could only use 3 sheets of foam core and a soda bottle and a piece of string and some paper clips, and it was just so creative and fun, and it made me realize what engineering was. To me, it was just giving you the tools and the skill set to build anything that you invent in your head. And to me, there's nothing more creative and empowering and exciting than that.
For you, it was a mentor that got you involved. It was an inspiration.
It was a female role model, a math female role model.
Connect the dots.
I don't remember when I wasn't interested, partly because I've always loved to know how things work. And I was really lucky in that I had parents and teachers who were always encouraging me to try new things, experiment. Although, admittedly, and I hadn't remembered this, the first present that I got that was related to STEM was a chemistry set. So definitely the white lab coat was probably in Santa Claus's mind because it was from Santa when I was 5. But it took me a while to find how my interests in understanding how things worked and my kind of interests in math and science classes would intersect with my kind of aspirations to lead a life largely engaged in public health. And that didn't happen for me until I was at Stanford and I took a statistics class. And I took statistics and all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, like this is really gonna help me figure out how things work and how to prioritize problems and potential solutions. And so fast forward, I just finished my PhD in international relations and public health, and it's heavily statistics based. And the work that we do at the Clinton Foundation in public health, but also in agriculture and economic development, we use a lot of statistics. And so although I don't have a STEM career, I couldn't do the work that I want to do or try to understand how to best connect the work that we're able to do at the Clinton Foundation to the world that we want to help build without statistics and without STEM. So I didn't have as clear-cut a path, but I also wouldn't be where I am today without that confluence of teachers and candidly my parents who were, giving me chemistry sets, even if it was from Santa Claus.
I know there's a lot of wonderful women out in the audience that have gone on to STEM careers. Is there anybody who has that sort of story themselves that could tell us how they got interested? Or are there any girls that would like to express what's keeping them interested? Don't be shy. Raise your hands. Not enough girls raise their hands in class. This is the first problem right here. We got someone right there.
So science wasn't ever really my thing. I was literature. Literature was it. And my sophomore year of high school, I had a chemistry teacher, and she told me, you're really smart, you can do it. And at the time, I was struggling with a lot of family things, and I figured, this isn't for me. But she kept pushing at me, and she said, you can do it, you can do it. And eventually I did. I grew to love it. I started doing actual labs. I fell in love. You can make this? This reaction happens? God, that was it for me. That's when I knew that STEM was where I wanted to be. And thanks to that teacher.
Oh, I love that. It really does take a couple mentors to just give you a little bit of encouragement. I hear that all the time. This is a conversation I feel like I've been having for years where I like to ask women in STEM, what got you here? What were the important factors for you? And one question or one answer that I seem to get a lot was a strong father figure, which is something I didn't expect. This is not a women's issue. This is half the population we're talking about. And how do you solve a problem using only half the population? I don't like those odds. I mean, I'm a little bit of a gambler. I wouldn't go to those odds. And so, encouraging your daughters or just giving encouragement in general, I think is going to be extremely important in helping propel them into STEM. I've got someone right here. Yeah, Monica.
So I was actually really lucky because I was really supported by NCWIT, which is the National Center for Women in Information Technology, and I actually won their Aspirations Award when I was a freshman. And what was incredible to me was I had some preconceived notions of what STEM were, but when I went to these events and when I started talking to these other girls that were like me, I realized that not only do I have the potential, but I also have a network behind me. And so it's not about having to do it alone, but that, through NCWIT and then through various other events and through now, I'm a CS major at Harvard, and just meeting other girls like me was just very, very encouraging.
So you're not as alone as Danielle was when she was there, which makes a big difference, having that cohort support.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question, Kari, and also
You
Debbie
wanna-
and Danielle?
Yeah.
Do you now feel the responsibility to be a role model, given that each of you in different ways, but kind of fundamentally are successful in STEM?
After you.
Absolutely. And I'm thrilled to do so. I mean, you know, when you didn't have that, when you were going through everything that was happening, like I think it's a big deal.
Yeah, it was something that made me feel, I didn't feel like I was worthy of it, quite honestly, because I didn't grow up into science. And it took me a while to actually go, oh, I am doing science. I didn't even realize I was doing science for years. I thought I was having fun. And it turns out what I was doing was science. And so for a while, when people were throwing role model at me, it's like, come on, me? I was an art major. And then I realized I do have this responsibility when little girls were coming up to me and saying, I'm interested in engineering because of your show. It took me aback, and I feel so honored. And now I've kind of taken on that role, and I'm excited and passionate about STEM, and I would love to propel more girls who are at that really critical age to continue in these fields, because clearly I have an interest in science now, and why didn't I continue that all the way up into my 20s? You know, I also talked to a lot of girls at the White House Science Fair. I was like, okay, so what do you think is something that might hold you back? And they said, sometimes the need to fit in is so much more overwhelming than the feeling that I want to be smart, or I want to, you know, continue on, because it's a really tough time when you're about 12 years old. You don't want to go into a career where you, like we said, we saw these role models for them. They didn't see people like, you know, Debbie or, you know, they saw, you know, like sort of the nerdy white man, and they couldn't see themselves in those roles. So becoming a role model for me, I started to connect the dots at how that would be important.
Yeah, I mean, so initially when I started Goldie Blocks, beyond just creating toys, I also wanted to create a role model. And we created this girl, Goldie, in her overalls and her tool belt to kind of stand her own against the Sid the Science Kid, Bob the Builder, Lego Man, you know, on and on and on, male science characters in the world. But what I didn't realize at first in starting the company is people started to look at me as a role model too. And it was so wonderful. I have this funny story when a few years ago I decided to go for it and run a marathon. And I'm not the most athletic person, but when I finally did it, all of my friends and family decided they were going to do it too, because they're like, well, if you can run a marathon, I can run a marathon. And now I think that's starting to happen too a little bit with engineering, and I think that's awesome, because it's true, I'm so passionate about it, and I love to hopefully have girls and women be able to relate to me and, you know, and be interested in a similar path.
Yeah, I think I've got another audience question. Linda Morris? Oh, did we already do it? No, I didn't even get to the answers. Oh my gosh. Live. What are you going to do? Elsbeth, break it down for us.
Sure. For those under 18, there was a split between playing outside and having a great teacher. For those 18 and over, the most chose having a great teacher.
Ah, there's the role model right there. Great teachers, mentors. All right. Shall we go on to our next question? Linda Morris.
Okay, and we've had a little bit of this conversation. What do you think keeps girls or women from entering STEM professions?
Okay, remember you can also go to the bing.com website /no ceilings to vote on your answers here so that we can continue the conversation with a bigger audience than just who's here. We've got the entire internet at our disposal. So what do you guys think is something that prevents girls from staying in sciences? I mean, you were talking about how the boys figured out all the secrets and kind of left you out.
Yeah, I think also one of the things, I went to this elementary school that was not a public school, and so there was a lot of flexibility and funky things going on, and so I could do any kind of science experiment I wanted, and the math classes were amazing, and you got a lot of sort of personalized attention, and I ended up with a programming teacher that was a woman when I was in 5th grade. And so I think like having mentors or visible people is really important, like we've talked about. But having some flexibility in the school system also is important, where then I went off to public school and everything was very regimented and there was not room to do sort of things outside of the box. You were very concerned about test scores and whatnot. And like what, for example, when I was in high school, my senior year, I had a semester of gym class requirement left. And I was a 3-sport athlete and I played on a traveling softball team and a basketball team, and I really didn't need another semester of gym. So I wanted to take botany because I thought that sounded awesome. And they said no. And so then my mom went in and she threw down with the principal and they still said no. And so it's like, I think that we need the encouragement and the mentors and the visibility and showing girls all the exciting things that can happen in STEM, but we also need sort of the school system to support that.
So I couldn't agree more with Danielle. And the school system holistically. So, in early elementary school years, girls are just as interested in math and science, not only as subjects, but also as potential career pathways. And by 4th and 5th grade, that starts to change dramatically. And there's a lot of research now around why that shift happens. It's partly because girls want to fit in. And it's also partly because teachers call on girls less in math and science classes in middle school. And again, it's like the flight hostess, right? It's not often a conscious decision, but it's the perpetuation of a pattern that has, for too long, not been challenged. And yet there is this even kind of larger question, arguably, around how do we ensure that the kids who are interested, boys and girls, have sufficient opportunities? And if we think about just computer science, in 20 out of 50 American states, computer science doesn't count towards graduation in those states. So high school students are disincentivized from taking it. We have about 30,000 public high schools in the United States. Only 6,000 of them offer an AP level computer science class. So although most offer some computer science class, only 6,000 offer an AP level class, which is partly why last year we had 3 states where no girls took the computer science AP, because there were fewer AP classes and then there were fewer girls taking them. So this is a complicated problem, but it's not one that is without a solution. We know we need to be investing more in ensuring teachers encourage girls and keep girls engaged in math and science in the middle school years. And we need to be investing more, as the president has said, in having robust computer science opportunities for every student who's interested at the high school level, because only then will we really ensure that we're capturing, every Danielle who knows that she's interested in computer science and clearly has, contributions to make for all of us.
What about you guys out in the audience? Do we have any anecdotes sort of supporting this or that you'd like to share with us? Right up there.
I went to a really small public school, and there was very few people that were interested in math and science, and so they actually took math classes away to introduce study halls, which I'm not sure what people need study halls for in high school when you're not doing math and science. And actually, I did really good in math, and I feel like my guidance counselor told me I could be a teacher. That was my only option once I was good in math. So it wasn't until I talked to my aunt, who was also a civil engineer, and encouraged me to go into engineering that I even knew that was even an option. And this was, being a junior in high school. So I feel like girls aren't explained all the career paths that they can have, throughout their education.
And how about after-school programs? Is anybody involved in anything like First Robotics or VEX or Girl Start? Or is there any, actually right over here. Here, let me just hand it off.
So for me, thankfully at my school, we have a really strong STEM program. And so that's what really got me interested. I was in STEM in middle school when they started it, or that's when they call it Galaxy. And I had that, and it really got me interested. But that was when we only did like mechanical engineering, and it was really interesting. It really got me captivated. And then when I got into high school, it was more programming, and it was really interesting. Though I'm not in it anymore, I still like get involved with like Mesa competitions, and I'm in Mesa, and we have a robotics club at our school, and it's small things like that that really keep me interested.
Sorry for my reach. Not a natural speaker, so that might have. Sorry. All right. I mean, I've seen a lot of really cool after-school programs that have inspired women. Did you guys have anything like that when you went to school that was sort of like non-curricular?
I did, actually.
You did?
I did. In the Little Rock public school system, when my father was governor, he decided to place all the magnet schools in rural areas, in the kind of most poor, under-resourced rural areas, and then in the urban areas equally in the most poor and under-resourced urban areas. And half the kids from the magnet school would come from the surrounding district and the neighborhoods, and then half would test into those programs. And so I tested into the math and science magnet for junior high school. And then within that, there were so many opportunities after school, particularly in math. So I saw, my first computer when I was, I don't know, probably 6 or 7. Santa Claus also gave me a computer, a Commodore, probably a brand that everyone here under the age of 20 has never heard of, and a Carmen Sandiego game, which maybe you have heard of, and some really cool kind of math galaxy games, although the backdrop looked nothing like what we saw earlier. But it wasn't really until I got to junior high school that I had that level of after-school support. And it was so conscientiously done, again, like just by the public school system, to connect math to different possible careers. So I remember like we would have a month where we would work on buildings to see if we wanted to be architects, or we would have a month where we would work on programming. And again, it was quite rudimentary because it was, like 1992. But all of that made such a difference to so many of my friends who, now have diverse careers from that program of like designing Pilates equipment, to being computer programmers. So I was really lucky, not only that those opportunities existed, but that the schools, and at least the school that I was in, made the most of those opportunities for students.
Do we have the results from that last question, by the way? You throw those up there. Okay, the question is, what do you think keeps girls and women, keeps them from entering STEM professions? Can we have the breakdown?
Sure. For those under 18, it was again a split between social norms or pressure and not having a supportive environment. And for those 18 and older, it was social norms or pressure.
So I think we've definitely hit on something here. What do you guys think of that? Is social norms and pressure, is that something that you've encountered in your, anybody? Yeah, right here.
So all my life I've been higher up in classes where I've been doing better than other students. And I remember being told a lot that I was a total goody two-shoes and that nobody wanted to be my friend because I was smarter than they were. And I mean, as rough as that was, I was still really confident that I was going to have a better career when I was older because they weren't trying as hard as they possibly could. And at my school right now, we have a lot of extra programs just like you did. Like, we've got a class where you go in and you learn how to build stuff on computers. And you can build stuff and you can do all sorts of stuff, and it's a really interesting thing, and I'm totally for it.
Well, you're a very strong girl, obviously, because you're here today. Do you have people at home that encourage you?
Yeah. My stepmom and my mom and my dad they all really, really encourage me because they all think that I have more potential than sometimes I think that I do, and they encourage me to do better than I can. And they push me.
Thank you. I think that's the hard part right there. I mean, if you're fighting against the social norms that are telling you that you're a goody two-shoe when you're just trying to be smart, that's crazy. And I'm so glad that you fought against that and that you're here today. Has anybody else had that same sort of experience? Yeah, right here. Let's see, where's the microphone gone?
Here, I can give you mine. Since Karen's enough to keep getting up.
So I guess it's like a similar story to her. Like,
in middle school and like sometimes in high school still, like people always called me an overachiever, just like doing extra credit and like having and like taking AP classes and stuff. So like it's like the environment sometimes where people like kind of ridicule you for like being an overachiever or whatever.
Do that to the boys?
No, not as much. It's just like there's a lot of like boys in our school. So like if you see a girl like doing a lot of sciencey stuff, they like judge you and call you a nerd and stuff. So like
for the boys.
yeah, it's like totally fine for the boys, but I guess like people just like judging you for like being a girl and like wanting to go into science. I guess you just need to have like people that support you and think like, okay, you can do this and like you can go into this science field and like it's totally okay for you to do that. So
Yeah, I read this really awful study once that it's sort of we're hard on ourselves as well, where a girl and a boy, the girls and the boys had gotten the same grade back. It was all set up. They had gotten an A-, and the girls, when asked, they said, "I blew it. I totally blew it." And the guys said, "I aced it." You know. So I think it's also just sort of this sort of social norm that we've put on ourselves. I think I have another anecdote or story right up here.
So when I was younger, in elementary school, you couldn't take science if you weren't on the literacy level that you had to be. And I remember that I never took science from kinder to 5th grade. I never took it until I got into middle school. And in middle school, when I started to see exactly what it was about, my interest grew. But in all my classes, the boys were always picked over the girls. They always thought that the boys had a better reasoning than the girls, when the reasoning was the same. It wasn't that much different, you know. And well, now like it's changed a bit, but not that much, because the teacher's always picking on the boys, not the girls all the time. And well, I really always try to do my best in every class that I can, especially in science.
I think that's why conversations like this are so important, is because I don't think that people honestly are doing that on purpose. I think they don't realize they're doing that.
I want to tell one. So when I was a senior and I had just found out I got into Harvard, and I was sitting in math class, and it was right before the class started. And this guy, Dan, sitting next to me, and he just found out he didn't get into Harvard. And he's moaning about it and complaining. And then he turns and he looks at me and he says, "You only got in because you're a girl." And I was taken aback, and at that age did not have anything really to say about it, and kind of carried that around with me. And then one day I realized that, like, yeah, damn straight I got into Harvard because I'm a girl, because I have better grades than you, I have better SATs, I certainly have better social skills. But really, like, who stands out more? A white guy who wants to do government at Harvard, they can't all be Bill Clinton, right? Or a girl who wants to do computer science. I mean, so all these things where they're calling you a goody two-shoes, or they're saying you're an overachiever, it's like, yeah, they're making fun of you because you stand out, and you're going to stand out in a really good way in a couple of years.
And I mean, they might be just doing that because they're jealous, quite honestly. Like, I think that people who see people achieving around them, it's easier to bring them down than to hype them up. I think it's important that we as women try to kind of network ourselves and bring each other up.
I completely agree with that. I also think it is important to think about kind of why people are being critical, and kind of what each of us wants to take from that criticism. Because some criticism is important, right? Whether you're working on a program or whether you're trying to develop an idea that may become a program or a building or a science innovation in medicine. And so that criticism from serious people that is meant seriously to help advance kind of your idea or your plan is important, even if sometimes it's uncomfortable, I think. And then there's the criticism that comes from people who are looking only to tear you down and protect their position in the status quo. And that criticism isn't about you or isn't about us. It's about them, right? So Danielle's so right. Like when Dan leaned over to her, that wasn't about her. That was about him and him lashing out and him being whether embarrassed or jealous, who knows? But that wasn't about her. And I think so often we as women or girls are susceptible to criticism that isn't about us, it's about the critic. And so I just hope that each of you can not think it's, A, a bad thing to be smart or an overachiever or curious, but B, if someone is telling you that in a really derogatory tone, to realize that's about the person who's saying that to you and not about you.
Thank goodness you were a strong enough woman to be able to realize where that was coming from. Absolutely. How about anybody else out here? Do you have any good stories that kind of are along those lines?
Well, I think it's definitely a social norms kind of thing, because a lot of girls at my school, their goal is to fit in instead of getting good grades or striving to be what they want to be when they get older. And they're just trying to fit in, and they're trying so hard. And I realized that in the last semester of my 8th grade year, it's not about fitting in. It's about striving to be what you want to be and getting there.
Well, you're so lucky you figured that out by the 8th grade, because I think it's hard at 40, that's hard. I commend you on that. I definitely want to hear from more of you of some of these stories.
Hi. I love that this is such a movement, and I think that one of the segments that we really need to co-op in this conversation are guidance counselors, because I think they have held such a power in the past to really dash aspirations of women and girls. And so I think we really need to get them to come to the conversation and be a part of the movement.
Absolutely. People are constantly asking me, how do we make science interesting? Science is already interesting. It doesn't have to be memorizing the components of cells in a book. It can be getting your hands dirty and having fun and engaging. But as fun as you make it, if we don't feel like we're participating, or that the world wants us to participate, we're not going to be driven to do it. Right over here, you have a microphone?
So I'm an electrical engineering student, and one day after one of my classes was a mechanical engineering class, my professor pulled me in and he said, I need to speak with you. And I walked in and he goes, well, looking at your test scores, I just think maybe you should reconsider. You're just really not smart enough for this. And so that was a hit, because in high school, I went to STEM high school. I was like the best in my class. Like I was doing it all. And I went home and I called my mom and I was like, Mom, am I really not smart enough? Because this guy, he says and she's like, no, you're okay. And so I'm an NC WIT winner as well. And it was nice to just be able to go online and be like, hey guys, this is what my professor said, and just have that support. But it's hard. I'm one of 2 women in the electrical engineering field in my entire school. So it's hard for that. And it's nice to see everyone here, but it's hard when you're doing it all by yourself. So that was kind of my hard story, I guess.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage the women who have made it in STEM to mentor some of the younger women, because it's so hard to connect those dots and it's so hard to find mentors. So definitely, if you could put yourself out there, which these women have.
I think it's so brave of you to share that story, because I know that that's happened to me a lot of times, and it happens to guys too, but they don't talk about it. And I can assure you. But it's important, and it is so brave of you to talk about it, because you will find the more you talk about it, other people will have had that same experience, and you won't feel alone. And kudos to you for sticking with it despite that really stupid professor.
Right over here. Sorry.
Worked in a university setting, that I think you should tell the dean
Yeah.
about that professor, because that is unforgivable behavior, and he should not be allowed to do that. And I would tell someone in your university.
Thank you.
So I wanted to echo that. I think it's not just guidance counselors, it's also introductory advisors in degree programs who need to make sure that they have unconscious bias training and can allow women to go into fields that they want. As a woman of color, I think it's especially critical to enable access for Hispanic and Black women. Black Girls Code is a great initiative in that respect. I'm a co-founder of Latinas in Computing, and so one of the things we do is mentor women through their professional careers from K through 12 into college and out. But I think the point that's really important in my own path is that I have heard those voices. I have hit glass ceilings, and I'm still here. I'm still passionate because I grew up with brothers. I just wouldn't take no for an answer. And I'm grateful for all the resources that I have, NC Wood, the Needed Work Institute, a lot of the organizations that support women, especially in computing.
Thank you. Do you have any more? I want to get as many of you in as possible before we actually have to wrap up here. Where's the microphone?
I'm over here. I lost interest in a lot of my science classes around 7th grade, and it's mostly because my teacher kept shoving me into groups with guys, and every time I got a test score back that sucked or I couldn't get something, they would always be like, "Why the hell are you in this class? You know, you can't do science. What are you doing?" So I was like, you know what, I'm done with science. This is over.
That makes me so sad because clearly you're somebody who was interested. I think it's definitely a whole world view we have to change here.
So I, like a lot of the other girls were saying, I'm kind of towards the top of my class, and I was very passionate about computer science and STEM. And one of the things I noticed that I had a lot of guy friends because in our computer science classes there were 2 girls. So I wasn't really afraid to be with the guys. I have 3 brothers. I was like, whatever, I'll take it swinging. But the biggest thing I noticed was that when I did a really big achievement or something that I was super proud of, the guys would turn to each other when they did something cool and be like, "Oh, great job, man, that's awesome." But when I did it, they'd turn on me because they were intimidated and start attacking me. And there was one particular instance where we had a STEMCom gala, and it was just kind of celebrating STEM within our district. And there were a lot of, like, the superintendent and everyone was there, and so it was a big deal. And so I was wearing, like, a skirt and this really nice blazer, and the guys just started attacking me about how, like, they were calling me a slut and that I looked like a stand-up, I don't even know, whore, and that I shouldn't have been there and stuff like that, and these were supposed to be my friends. And so the biggest thing that I've noticed is that guys get intimidated by girls and that you can't back down. You have to be like, you know what? I am who I am. You need to figure out your own issues and not attack me just because I'm a girl.
Wow. Wow. Can I ask you guys, do you have any advice it seems like this is a common theme. Do you have any advice to combat this sort of thing?
Well, I think, again, I am so grateful that you recognize, like Danielle, that was not about you. And that frequently when people are trying to kind of tear down women and girls, the physical is what's most focused on. Whether it's how our hair looks or our clothes or our shoes or the sound of our voice or our skin. And to just not let that distract you, and to just have that same attitude and to please, as Debbie said earlier to one of kind of the stories, just keep sharing that story because it's so courageous that you, not only kind of had the reaction that you did, which was instinctual, but B, that you got up and shared the story with all of us here and online. And, for better or worse, then you also have just become a role model, for other girls and young women to be able to stand up to that criticism, not take it personally, and to just keep doing what you're doing because you love it and you are good at it.
I'll tell you what, I am a woman on television, and people can be highly critical from their basements when they're on the internet. I remember when I started, I was encouraged to look at the message boards and respond to people because we wanted to really engage and try to get the science there. And the guys just didn't face this. They were asked questions like, "Oh, what do you think would be the outcome of that myth?" And I would just get this rage of, "You're a bubblehead. Why are you there? You're only there because you're a girl. You're only there because you're pretty. You're only there because you're not pretty." And just criticizing everything from my weight when I got pregnant, whether I should be still there because I'm pregnant and that I was getting fat. And now you're not attractive. And all of this horrible negativity. It took the longest time for me to get a thick skin about it. But I was talking to a woman that I respect, and she was the one that said, first of all, stop reading those boards because let them filter that for you because that's awful. And secondly, think about where it's coming from. Think about the anonymous sources it's coming from. Think about the people who are sending those to you. And don't listen to those people. There are encouraging people out there. Those are the ones that you need to listen to. And you are on television as a woman, and you're dealing with science. Right there, you've already achieved something.
So the piece of it, I'm Ruth Farmer with the National Center for Women in IT, and thank you all for everything you're saying. Hi, Debbie. Hi. So the piece of advice I'd like to share with all these young women, because you can get really focused on these negative stories, and I can tell story after story that I've heard from the young women I work with. We live in a really unique time where we have social media, and even though there's only 2 girls in your class, you can connect to other girls online through Facebook or Snapchat or Instagram or whatever it is that you're doing. Build yourself a community so that when these things happen to you and you can go, oh my gosh, this just happened, and you get positive feedback instead of negative feedback. And you really do have to internalize that those comments are not about you at all, and that, you know, that boy that walks out going, I aced that test, he might have taken the class before and failed it. Maybe this is his second time. Who knows why he's saying that? Maybe he's bolstering his own confidence. That is not about you. And so build yourself a community, use whatever you have to connect with girls that are in other schools, in other communities. We have more than 3,500 young women that we work with nationwide, and we use social media to talk to them all the time so that these incidences don't have that impact of pushing them right out of the pipeline.
Thank you. You are so right. That is an amazing insight. And on that, I'd actually like to wrap it up with that, because I think that is the best thing I've heard. That's a great insight. Unfortunately, we're really out of time, and that was the last question we're going to be able to answer today. So, Chelsea, would you like to make any closing remarks?
Just briefly, again, to thank you, Kari, to thank Debbie and Danielle, not only each of you for being here, but each of you for being role models, and to thank our audience for your candor and your commitment to continuing to ensure that women and girls are not only interested in STEM, but stay engaged. We'll all be better off for all of you fulfilling your dreams and aspirations. And I hope, as I said earlier, that this is just the beginning of the conversation. Please continue to send us your thoughts, your ideas, your anecdotes. The work of No Ceilings is very organic at this point, and we want as much input and advice, candidly, as all of you care to offer. So again, thank you to George Sparks and the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. Thank you to Elspeth and to Microsoft. And thank you all for your courage and your convictions. And I can't wait to see what you invent, what you build, what you imagine, and what ceilings we break. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Debbie. So please remain seated while the panelists leave. But on behalf of the Clinton Foundation, I would like to thank you for joining us here today. And please continue to send your thoughts and questions, because we really encourage you to also fill out that survey at clintonfoundation.org/no ceilings. And we want to continue this conversation. And like so beautifully pointed out, you guys all have each other. You have each other through social media. So let's keep this conversation going. And if you want to reach me personally on Twitter, I'm at Kari Byron. I would love to keep having this conversation. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming.